let's get into that conversation. It's a round table, it's a discussion, a chat. And I love this panel because it has a young edge to it. Young people doing great stuff. We're talking about the Constitution, amendment, review, a new one entirely. What will they be? Well, the National Assembly is clear on what they want to do. It's a constitutional review. But what are the things we should put into it? What are the things we should expunge from it? Let us know, as we said. But let's start the conversation right here in the studio. And we have joining us two young, brilliant Nigerians. Right here in our Lagos studio is Adejoke Ogunlewe. She's a lawyer, managing partner, Ogunlewe and Ogunlewe. Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Absolutely. And joining us from our Abuja studio is Ekpa Stanley Ekpa. He's a lawyer and partner, Plan Partners leadership consultant. He is a man in all white. Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, Hurried. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. By the way, you can also join this conversation on WhatsApp and online, X, Facebook, Instagram, what have you. Let's have a robust conversation. And let me begin with Adejoke. A lot of young Nigerians hear constitutional review, amendment, and they think, okay, leave it to the older generation. Let them do it right, and whatever happens, we'll just, of course, take it. And I think it's perhaps been the case for some time. The average young Nigerian thinks it's not my purview, right? I'm not even a lawyer to begin with. You're a lawyer, you're a young Nigerian, and I imagine that you've seen this process time and again. Do and explain for an average young Nigerian what the constitutional review amendment process is about. If you could do that in a few sentences, what would you say it is?
I'll start by saying that it's incredibly important that young people, old people, everybody, educated, uneducated, don't leave the constitutional matters to just the politicians or to the people in the National Assembly. It's a document that guides our every life. It is the ground norm that other norms, other documents, other policies, other acts derive their validity from. So it is not just some people's business. You can't leave something that is that incredibly important, that is that integral, that is the foundation and the bedrock of what determines the prices of even the food you eat, your housing, your water, your roads, your power, energy, your health, to just some people. Everybody has to be involved. It is a document that guides our every life. And that, currently, the process, as it is in the current constitution, for amendment is that it is endorsed by the National Assembly and 2/3 of the State Assembly adopt it. It's a very cumbersome process. It's going to involve, like I said, 2/3 of the State National Assembly. So you're looking at, if we have 36 states, that's 36 states House of Assembly, 2/3 of that, please help me with that mathematics, have to adopt it. Right? So that's the current process as it is now. There's been piecemeal amendments, piecemeal additions here and there, but as it is in the Constitution currently, that is the process of a hardcore amendment to hardcore parts.
I love the way you put it. Just walk us through in just a few sentences. That's all you get from a young person. Let me come to you now. There's a tendency to now think, it's too long now. That process is too big, right? If I want to edit stuff on my phone, I just click edit, I delete, I type what I want, I save, and it's a document already. So how can young people approach this without thinking, it's too lengthy, it's too cumbersome, it will take a long time, it's like a marathon? How do you think we should then approach it, a mindset, before we then start breaking it down so that we can set this conversation on a good foundation?
Sorry,
I imagine you didn't get some part of what I said. So I want you to speak to the young Nigerian who's thinking this process is cumbersome, 2/3, that whole long process. What kind of mindset should we have? She has made a valid point that we can't leave the important things to just politicians alone. So I'd like you to just piggyback on that before we break things down.
Okay, thank you very much once again for having me. I would want to break it down to how best I think young person should begin to have an input into the entire process. As my colleague has rightly noted, though it's cumbersome a process, it a process that requires some technicalities at some stages of it. But the most important thing is that we're able to follow it through that. Unless we are involved in the process of the amendment of the Constitution, we will continue to have a system where the politicians will continue to make claim of amendment or begin to also annually have a budget for amendments and go through the process of amendment without necessarily having to amend the Constitution to reflect what we as Nigerians really want to see, or what we aspire to have as a perfect document that works for all of us. And so, in as much as the process of amending the Constitution looks cumbersome, it is something actually that have phases for people to intervene. Currently, there has been a call for public submission of proposals as to what aspects of the Constitution we would want to see to be amended. So the best thing for young persons, for Nigerians who have interest, and of course all of us should have interest, is to begin to look at different components of our lives, really, that the Constitution regulates, as to how best should we push that to the committee as it stands now, that at the end of the day, or by the time it gets to the committee stages, or stages that citizens may not directly be involved in, those opinions, as we've sent to them, would be captured in the amendment process.
So interesting. Now that we've laid a good foundation, I believe this is the point where we should begin to emphasize areas where young people should take an interest in right now, because we have talked about how important it is for them not to leave it to the big politicians, the elderly. So for you, Mrs. Ogunlewe, I wonder if it's okay for me to call you that. Adejoke, okay, thank you. So is it governance, forms of government? Is it regulation? What areas should young people be focusing on right now if they were to advance for an amendment or for what they would love to include in the Constitution? Okay,
to start with, and this there's no way I won't represent my gender anywhere I'm given a platform. The first part is there must be adequate gender representation. We may not be able to achieve what Chile has achieved, which was having the Constitution now reformed that will be 50-50. Like half of the gender here, half of the gender here will sit down and will say, we're going to look into the Constitution and we're going to be equally represented. But at least let's have a good representation of women. Let us meet the quota that we currently run now. And then we have to look at the economic policies. The Constitution as it currently is doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve quite a large percentage of Nigerians. So we're looking at things like the exclusive lists. We're going to be looking at separation of powers, how to devolve power to the states, controlling the resources and controlling the destiny of each state. We're going to be looking at, like I said earlier when we were talking off air, that the Constitution is like the elephant that many blind men are touching. Everybody is going to talk about the part that is incredibly important to them. To start with, I believe the document that we are operating is very faulty. It says we the people, but we the people did not sit, we were not part of it. It was done by Yadudu, they started the work on it in 1995, if I'm correct, under late General Sani Abacha, and then Justice Nikitobi sat on it, and he had less than 155 days to work on it. And from what I've read and researched, as of the time of the swearing in on May 29, 1999, they had to work overnight to print copies so that the president, then President Olusegun Obasanjo, would have a copy to be sworn in. So it was foisted on us. It was given to us. It was promulgated by former General General Abdulsalam Abubakar. We did not have any input, no referendum. As at that time in 1998, thereabout, Niger, our next door neighbor, had a referendum in their constitution. So how can a document that we had no part in, when I say we, let's say I was very young then, I was probably in junior high school or senior high school, I had no part or no say in it. I'm sure my mother, my father, my relatives had no say in it. There was a referendum is everybody agrees that this document will guide us. So given that we didn't agree then, let us come together now and agree on, okay, what economic principles, and a particular part that I'm particularly passionate about is in chapter 2, which are the fundamental objective directive principles, the social rights. Your right to shelter, right to education, right to food. Those are rights that they are currently in our constitution, but they are not justiciable, they are not enforceable. There's nobody to hold responsible. We don't even have the forum and the platform like the Constitutional Court to test them. If I go to bed hungry, who do I hold responsible? If my accommodation is going to be demolished, who do I hold responsible? So we have those lofty rights there. And even the chapter 4, which, I mean, as a young person, I will speak to that, which includes all the section 36, your right to life, right to legal representation, right to be told what you do, right to privacy, that we're supposed to be able to test in court. You find out that if you get a judgment, for example, against the police today, how do you enforce that judgment? You are getting a judgment against the person who is supposed to enforce the judgment. And that's why a lot of young people don't believe in the court system. And especially speaking to the issue of police brutality, which if you haven't experienced it, you know someone who has experienced it. On my way, I told the driver that as a lawyer, this is my 12th year at the bar, I'm afraid of the police. When I go out in the night sometimes with my husband and we're like, no, let's pass this route. Let's pass this other route. The police will be there. We haven't done anything wrong. But like my professor told me during my LLM, dead men don't tell stories. So I would rather avoid a place where the police is. So these are the things that personally concerns me, that have been affected by the economic part, the rights part, and the social right. Right to education, right to shelter, all those things. Because in my opinion, or from my perspective, you cannot enjoy your fundamental human rights, which are the section 36 rights, without being able to enforce your chapter 2 rights. What is right to privacy for a man who has no shelter? What is right to legal representation or right to be read your right to a man who has no education? So there must be some sort of enforceability. We have to, it's like rebuilding again, but this time around we are not rebuilding from scratch. We are rebuilding from experience of what we've had. Okay, we've had a document that didn't work out for us well. This time around, we want a document that adequately, effectively represents everybody, irrespective of your gender, your creed, your tribe, your age, whether you're from the minority or from the majority, whether you're a man or a woman or you're a child, that will even effectively represent the children that we're going to be bringing into the world in years to come.
That's a long list, you know. I'm from a lawyer at that, and I'm going to stand up briefly from, you know, my seat of neutrality to join you on the concern about gender representation.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Stanley, I imagine that you want to contribute to some of the things that she has said, and of course, what are your concerns also about what young people should be thinking about in terms of amendment, or what they would like to include in constitution amendment?
Thank you very much. For young people like myself, I think the first point is that we should begin to look at how we're able to galvanize our different constituencies, different senatorial districts, right? So to the effect that there are two things I think we should start with. Number one is we've gone through different amendment process and of the Constitution. By the end of this constitutional amendment process, we should be able to be happy that the Constitution we have, or we're going to the final amended copy we're going to have, should be something that would not require us to keep complaining of the same thing we complain every day about our constitutional clauses. Because as it stands now, we complain that almost all Nigeria's problem is anchored on the kind of constitution, the 40 lines of the Constitution. Secondly, we must also begin to look at how, at the end of this particular process, we won't be amending the Constitution every year, because currently we budget to amend the Constitution almost every year. So that is the first thing that we should have in mind as young persons. Then the second thing we should begin to look at is the governance component of it. Because my colleague has rightly mentioned the fact that if you have a judgment against the police, and you want to enforce it, there's just this mindset that this institution is the one that is meant to protect or even enforce this judgment that I've gotten. So where do you start from exactly to go to them? There must be a system where the constitutional provisions gives people the opportunity to really feel safe as Nigerians. And that's why I think that the reform of the Nigerian police should be the primary thing that we should begin to look at. Number one, the idea of having a state police shouldn't just be for the sake of having power devolved to the state to secure citizens' rights. It should also be to the extent that there's a proper governance system of how the police should function, from the recruitment process to how they treat citizens, and to the last responsibility line of the police. And then we now begin to think of the natural resources at the states. You can't have a system where you have the Land Use Act talk about the state governors having control of the land in trust for the people. And again, the federal government has control over the natural resources under the land. It's eventually not going to give the state governments the chance and opportunity to galvanize those resources that the states have, to be able to perhaps look at how Chapter 2 of the Constitution would be actualized. Because as my colleague has rightly said, you cannot have right to life provided in Chapter 4. And then there's a section that talks about providing adequate health facilities or provision of health care to people at the grassroots. And yet, we do not have that provision because Section 6 already talks about the fact that Chapter 2 in its entirety is not justiciable rights. So that becomes a fundamental problem. Of course, gender issue is something that is very fundamental, and we must begin to see how best that such inclusion in the new amendment will make provision for. The last amendment, I think that was for the 9th Assembly, the proposal was that 100 more additional parliamentary seats should be created for women. That bill didn't scale through. This time around, I think we should begin to look at how best perhaps we shouldn't put a cap of figure to it. We should leave it open to make sure that we have a quota system that is more feasible, really. Because unless we have a system where there's inclusivity, eventually we may not be able to achieve the kind of results we're looking at. But more importantly, the happy thing with this current process is the fact that from this 8th Assembly, the bill-by-bill model that we adopted, is something that we should begin to leverage on to say if it is the local government we're looking at. Because, and again, I go back to issues that has to do with subnational level. Local government is a critical component of our constitutional issue that we must also see that it scales through this time around. You cannot have a system where there's no governance at the baseline of our governance system, the local government system, and then we expect to have developments at subnational. It doesn't work that way because the federal government doesn't know the concern of my local government, really. And so the subnational local government issues, policy issues, and how everyone is involved in the governance system, I think are the primary issues that we must begin to push collectively to see that it goes just beyond one aspect of the Constitution being amended.
All right, we're going to take some questions we asked as people, young people across the country, exactly to find out what they want change in the Constitution. Then I'll come back to ask both of you some questions. Let's take a listen to them.
The Nigerian Constitution is one that a lot of debate has been going on about. There are many schools of thought. Personally, what I would want to see in the Constitution of Nigeria is a constitution that is alive to the current times. We're developing at a very rapid pace. It's a technology age. So we want a constitution that unites us as Nigerians. All the diversity that we have in this country, we want a constitution that unites us in that constitution. We also want a constitution that allows for rapid development of all sectors of the economy. A constitution that every Nigerian can be proud of. So that is the kind of constitution that we need.
I think Nigerian constitution is overdue for review. One, the constitution has already been abused. The constitution is watery. There is nothing in the constitution that is being followed. So as a result of that, the Constitution is overdue for review. There are so many things that are supposed to be included in the Constitution, in the new Constitution. One, the issue of local government autonomy. Two, the immunity of executive arms of government. We're talking about the governor and then the president. And you go further again to talk about the electoral law. You understand? Then you also talk about the judiciary.
The Nigerian constitution is governed by a lot of lacuna. And that is the more reason over the years, successive administrations have tried to review the constitution so that it will stand the test of time. But at the moment, this new arrangement, I think it is a welcome development. And of particular mention is the fact that this present change in the constitution must reflect and adopt the position of traditional institutions.
Mega reason for it to be changed is the fact that we need to consider another form of government if this is not working for us. So many people have believed that you cannot stay in Aso Rock and know what is happening here in Ogun State, in the depth of Ogun Water side, in the depth of Ipokia. You may not know, effectively trust those who are supposed to man the people at that place. So people really feel that, which is of my opinion too, that the constitution, we need to plan and we need to try another form of government.
Personally, I feel a new constitution may not be attainable given the circumstances that we find ourselves in Nigeria. And that's why the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has an inherent provision, Section 9 of the Constitution, which says that the National Assembly members, majority of them, if they have the support of majority of National Assembly members, they can amend the Constitution. Given that background, I believe that Nigerians should be allowed to have a semblance of amendment in the Constitution. And this amendment should devolve a lot of powers to the states. The Constitution that we currently operate has given too much powers to the federal government. And this is in itself self-defeatist. We need to devolve powers to the federal units. Let the federal units have a lot of resources to cater for the needs of the citizens. Then the police system that we have is centralized. In the new constitution or amended constitution, there should be a provision that will guarantee the provision, the creation of state police.
Well, those are the views of a lot of people across the country. Let's come back to the studio. Let me get back to you before I come back to Adejoke on this one. Now, what seems to be going on is that people are picking what they think should be altered in the Constitution or amended. Section 8, Section 9 provides for that alteration, but Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Olisa Agbakoba, says, look, we may not necessarily be going that route with this consistent piecemeal all the time. That the fear that we cannot replace the Constitution is answered in Section 4, subsection 1 and 2 of the Constitution that gives some power to the National Assembly to make laws. That he said, look, the Constitution as it is not an act. It's a schedule attached to an act. So all we have to do is to create a new law and retrieve the schedule from that particular act and create a new act. I don't know, because the argument is, if we need a new Constitution, how do we even go about it?
Thank you very much. I think that we must come to the realization that no constitution, no piece of a constitution as a document, is ever perfect in its form. When my colleague was making her submission earlier on, she talked about the fact that Nigerians did not really, it wasn't a consensus of all Nigerians. And to be fair to Nigerians, really, it was a hurried document. However, if you want to look, let's start historically at the basis to which that constitution was made. There was a need to transition from military to a civilian rule. By whatever means that constitution came into fair effect. I'm also bearing in mind for the fact that the Justice Nick Tobey's led committee, constitutional committee, also went around every part of this country, almost all the regions, notwithstanding the short period of time given to them. Now, it was a good thing that we've come to a democratic system through that piece of document. What I think we have to look at is, of course, I respect the views of Leonard Sick. However, I think we must begin to see how we be serious with the amendment process itself. For the last 23 years now, we have constantly amended the same documents. Now, if you say you want to enact, if we say you want to have a completely different constitution, the challenge is not the fact that you're not going to have lacuna in the constitution. The challenge basically is that the lacuna will still be amended, to reflect the changing realities of society. We can actually go through the same constitutional amendment as Section 9 provides as it is now, notwithstanding the difficult process of the amendments, and highlight the very important issues that need to be amended in the Constitution. And then we galvanize exactly the collective wishes of the people to make sure that the final document itself, and that was what I tried saying earlier on, the final document itself is something that reflects the collective will of the people, really. The National Assembly is already a representative of the people. And so you cannot have a process where you want to have everybody assemble at the same time, or people have a referendum at different places that takes a longer period of time before you can have a perfect document. No. And it doesn't even have to go through that route. If you look at the provisions of the National Confab report, you realize that most of the items we're looking at now, either the amendment of Section 308 for immunity clause, either the amendment of the Section 1602 on joint account of local government and state, another amendment of the provisions on INEC to create or to make it truly independent. The National Confab report already has a comprehensive clauses that we can either go through an executive bill to the Assembly, or the National Assembly, in its wisdom, can begin to say, how do we take a comprehensive look at this document to achieve a significant result from that point of what has been recommended. Mind you that the National Confab was attended by people from different regions, which is almost like a reflection of a referendum. People being sent from different points where they have been elected to go and represent the interest of different stakeholders, different groups in the country. Okay. And so I do not think that it may be the best route that we're having an entirely new constitution. Okay. I think it's in our best interest to see how the current amendment process, as Section 9 provides, is being used in the best way that we achieve the desired result through it. Okay, let me come back to you, Adejoke. I know some people reference Rwanda, that in 3 months they put together this reform commission and changed about 1,000 laws in about 3 months. But you mentioned it in passing, and it's also referenced 2014, which looks close to a gathering of the people. So if we're gathering as a people, who are these people? Some are proposing ethnic collectives, not political parties. You have you're spearheading issues of gender and all of that. So who should gather to change or amend constitution that will truly come close to reflecting the will and the intent of the people?
To piggyback off what you said, the 2014 confab was a coming together of very quality people. There were about 492 people, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, not enough women. I would say that not enough women were in that confab. But the issues they discussed were very quality issues. They are issues that we are currently still dealing with: insecurity, the economy, devolution of power, separation of power, immunity, religion being a private matter, a little bit of gender issue as well. And, they propose solutions to those things. It's an over 10,000 document. And between that time and now, there's been about 3 terms of government. Getting it to be effected, it looks to me sometimes, I know it's cumbersome. Many things can be true at the same time. Is it hard to get it effected? Yes. Is it possible? I believe it is. Is there a political will to do it? I'm not sure that is in abundance. And looking at the current provision in the Constitution as to a full amendment or getting a new document, looking at the Rwanda route. Rwanda is not, our country, our population is a bigger population. It's a bigger economy, more diverse in terms of the ethnicity, the language, even the economic imbalance and all those things. But what I would say is any documents that would dictate my life, my health, my well-being, my children's future, the future of the economy, which all of us are in it, everybody should have a say. In either we're going through the current provision, going through the National Assembly, which, I mean, got majority votes, they were elected, they're elected officials who represent and they are serving the people, or we want to go through the Rwanda route and looking at it and said, you know what, we need a brand new document to guide our being together as a nation, our well-being and all those things. So either route, the conclusion is we need a document that reflects our current realities and will speak to the future, especially as it has to do with the economy, the well-being, and the security issues, amongst other things.
Amongst other things, let's get into that. By the way, someone has a comment for this conversation. This is Baba on X saying that, okay, two of them actually. One referred to you saying your speaker said she was not involved in the writing of the Constitution. She was represented because someone from her constituency did. Is she involved in governance now? Yes, he believes, because she voted, and if she didn't, she had the opportunity to do so, but didn't. Then he added to this, we cannot all be where the decisions about our country is being taken. Yes. Once we have representatives, we should speak to those representatives and also elect competent representatives. No constitution is eternally perfect, hence periodic reviews. And I think both of you have spoken to them. Yes. I don't know if you want to respond to anything, or let me just move on to the question.
I voted.
Right.
And I have access to, when I mean access, many people may not know this, but the numbers of your representatives are online. I'll tell you a quick story. Recently, in my hometown, my constituents, there was one of the biggest market got burnt, and the government was people had rebuilt, and they were trying to demolish what people had rebuilt. Yeah. And I noticed and observed that some of the women just started dropping dead. These were breadwinners who were, taking care of their families, and you're about to take away their livelihood without having any form of backup plan for them. So I sent a text message to the House of Rep member in my constituency in Ogun State, in Shagamu. And I said, Madam, people are dying here. These women need an alternative. The government cannot just come in and demolish shops that they've rebuilt. And she responded, and my mother asked me, how do you have a number? I said, it's on the internet. So this is a call to both young and old people to get involved.
Absolutely.
Those people are your elected officials. They are your servants. Send them messages, send them emails. If you have parents who are not educated, get their opinions, forward it to them. Like I said, if a document is going to guide your entire life, and other documents that guide your entire life derive their validity from it, you should have a say.
Just quickly, before we get into other issues, there are those who have recommended and suggested, young and old, that they want some soft things in the Constitution, like free food. Can that be a provision? Free Wi-Fi, you know who's saying that, of course. Things like life imprisonment for corrupt politicians, or grand corruption, cutting politicians' salaries. The politicians are taking a lot of heat this morning.
They are the ones who would do the amendment, so I doubt if they would do things that will hurt them, because as it is currently, that document serves them. So that's another hurdle we have to scale.
So it's no more we the people, it's we the politicians.
So that's why we need a truly reflective document of we the people, because this document as it currently is doesn't serve everybody, it serves the politicians. Many people I know quite a lot of people know this, many younger people who know this. The presidents in America, the food they eat in their house, the people don't pay for it. They are invoiced. They are invoiced for any form of largesse. So, but we have a very well padded budget feeding our executive, buying cars every time for all these people who represent us while we, walk on bad roads, and they drive nice SUVs. So you should ask yourself every day, who does this government serve? Who does this document serve? Does it serve you? Do you feel adequately represented? I don't feel adequately represented. I don't feel adequately served. Yes, free food. All those things are in chapter 2. Like I said earlier, social rights.
Yeah.
But what do you hold responsible if you go hungry to bed? You probably are going to one NGO, a church, or to a neighbor to give you food. You can't hold your government responsible because every home is running a small mini government. You're providing your water. Show me where there is tap, clean pipe-borne water provided by the government, or that is government run, that you can drink in Nigeria today. Somebody asked that question on X a few months ago. Nobody has been able to answer. Tap water, edible to drink, provided for by the government, nowhere in Nigeria. Everybody's taking either sachet water or bottled water or boiling water. So these are the issues. Yeah. It's okay for people to ask for free food. How do we fund it? It's not just making laws and you know how they come with manifestos. We'll give you free meals. How do we provide for this? Can our economy support it? Okay, if our economy can't support it currently, what can we do for our economy to support it? Will it be the states who will be responsible? Yeah. Will it be the local government? How do we make provision for this in our constitution and in our budgets?
We have some messages on WhatsApp on the review of the Constitution. Somebody saying, okay, this is Lucky, a K-Wedaye. So are we really serious about the review of the Constitution, or are we just on a road show, just asking? Because I have the next one.
Well, this one is from Fatih, I believe, and they say, in the new Constitution, please, President, let the kidnappers be killed. He who kills by the sword dies by it. Kidnapping will stop completely. Prisons are full to the brim. Next, you will hear prison break and they're all free again. Well, Fatih should be decided on where they belong on this one.
Billy Tom from Jos says there is no youth age or age barrier in the making of or an amendment of Constitution, despite the fact that the document is a legal entity. It is given life by the people of a country and those who operate it. Yes. And, you know, it goes on. But the point is, first, Nigerians are interested in this fantastic point, and it's good to see some of these suggestions and proposals. It's important to now take this, which is what both of them have said, beyond this, and then now begin to relate to your representatives, because they are the ones that will be engaged in all of the... It's actually a roadshow, let's be honest. It is a roadshow because they will go across the states eventually, but it should just be a roadshow. It should be a roadshow that will bring about some fruit. Let's go to Stanley Ekpa in Abuja studio. And I mean, you've seen some of those comments and the rest. I wonder if there's something you think we're also missing that we need to factor in as we wind down.
Thank you. I think what the most important thing we should consider also is the fact that the Constitution is not a document that's meant to have the entirety of our problems, you know, included in just that single document.
Yeah.
We should also begin to look at how, as Nigerians, as constituents, we are able to identify the places where, with the different laws that we've identified. For someone else mentioned the issue that has to do with life imprisonment or death penalty for corrupt officials. Mm-hmm. If you understand the fact that there are laws that establish the anti-graft agencies, for instance, or there are criminal laws. Now, how do we get lawmakers to put pressure on them to say that we amend the different laws that such issues, you know, falls under to reflect such a reality? I mean, it's a good thing if we say that there should be death penalty for corruption, really, because corruption kills, corruption affects lives, people's lives on a daily basis. And so if we have such amendment to such act, I mean, that's a very good thing. However, people have to understand the fact that no government in the world is self-accounting. Yes. People have to make government to function and to work for them, really. Just like the previous amendment, let me take a component of it, for instance. The Not Too Young to Run Act. You see, that amendment took effect because people had to mobilize. People had to go out. People had to identify where and how is the best process to which they will go from the federal and then get back to the sub-national. So it wasn't just about hoping or tweeting, it was also about taking action, really. Yeah. And when they took action, they understood the fact that they needed to enforce states, you know, to also get the approval as Section 9, you know, Subsection 2 requires. And that exactly is where I think we have to really focus on at the moment. The things we need to see or reflected in the Constitution are things that we must educate ourselves on, or constantly educate ourselves on. It's not everything that would be reflected in the Constitution. And we must know which that we have to take as a fight, when to fight for it. Because if we just have a conversation and allow it to the National Assembly, eventually we may not achieve the result. Second thing is this. The proposals the National Assembly is calling for at the moment, it is not everybody that can contribute to that proposal. And that is where we can now begin to organize town halls at different constituencies to say, yes, we've elected you. But again, these are the things that you should also add to the things you are doing in the process of the amendments. Issue that has to do with our daily lives, as my colleague has talked about, Issue that has to do with Chapter 2. Do we begin to look at the wisdom of the draftsmen when they created that section that says you cannot take these people to court if they don't provide for your right to health, right to development, right to a clean environment and all that? We must begin to look at what was the wisdom really, because perhaps at the time when such law was made, it was made to the effect that if you distract these people, they are not going to provide the kind of governance that we need. But at the moment, is the governance going on?
Absolutely.
If with all the leeway we've given to them, they are unable to provide the kind of governance that is expected of them, it then means that they are already self-distracting themselves.
Yes.
And there's now a fundamental need for them to be taken to court where they fail to provide for such fundamental rights, as section, chapter 2 of the Constitution provides. These are some of the issues we must begin to look at if we are going to achieve significant results.
As you made that point, I think I heard someone say amen to that one. Very vital point, really. And I think this is where we have to anchor on this. By no means is this the end of the conversation. We're just getting started. But I'd like to thank you so much, Adejoke Ogunlewe, lawyer, managing director of Ogunlewe and Ogunlewe. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a very, very brilliant conversation we've had.
Thank you.
As well as Stanley Ekpa, lawyer, partner, Plan Partners, leadership consultant, joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for your time. Obviously, we'll be having this conversation.
It's an ongoing conversation.
Week out. Thank you so much as well. There's a final comment we'd like to take as we just switch gears to the next segment. It's from Adebari Adewale from Surulere here in Lagos.
Adebari said, any reform that will be made in Nigerian constitution should be 1, big sectoral based, that is cover all sector, both old and new. 2, regional allocation review. 3, strictly adhere to the rule of law. Well, that's what you've been saying. Keep it coming. And of course, we have a brand new handle, CTV Morning Brief. Just post there and we will do as much as possible to amplify your voice. But that's it on this particular segment of the conversation. When we come back, we won't talk about that issue of data. Let's come back to it and talk about it. Join us again.